Much for joining this session. We're going to talk about our case study that we have had at IBM. My name is Krzysztof Rudek. I'm from IBM Poland Software Lab, based in Kraków. Frankly, we again don't have the screen. Just one more thing that came to my mind is that Mac might not be working properly on a battery. Wiesz co, oni Okay, should be good. Thank you, Piotr. Sorry for the delay. Folks, my name is Krzysztof Rudek. I'm a DevOps engineer working at IBM Poland Software Lab located in Kraków. Today what I wanted to talk to you is why technology matters. And I know that topic seems to be a little bit too generic, maybe, but even the topic today, something that I wanted to talk with you, is a bit generic. So it's not about bleeding edge technology. It's not about something sexy. It's about case study that we had at my project, in my product, a few months ago, maybe a year ago. And this is something that is really often in DevOps area at our work, because from one side, sure, we want to use the newest possible technology. We want to have flying dashboards. We want to have something that is optimized to nanoseconds and so on and so on. But at the end of the day, I'm asking myself, who really is my customer? And as a DevOps engineer, I must admit that my customer is my development team. And sometimes what development team can create, or what sometimes from the heritage of older projects we as a DevOps team can get, it's not really sexy. It's not really nice. It's something that we need to maintain. We need to work with that. We need to make sure that our product at the end of the day is built, is deployed, is packaged to whatever is your delivery vehicle. I was wondering how to start with this conversation, with this talk, to make sure you are not bored to death at the very beginning. Anyway, I need to be boring for at least a few minutes. Why? I wanted to talk about why technology matters in robust organizations. What does it mean? Firstly, what is technology in DevOps area? What we are doing is we are building some tools, right? So we have our toolbox and we are giving that to developers and saying, hey, this is something new stuff. Our company paid for that, for the licenses, X amount of money. It would be nice if you could use that. It would be better for everyone. Those are tools. But what is the build itself, right? We're using tools to get the build. What is build? We'll come to that, because that also is not as clear as we all think, especially DevOps guys, yeah? And the third thing is team. Who is going to use that? And who is us in our work, in our companies? We are talking about we. Who we? We DevOps or we development team? We X company? So I wanted to really briefly go through that. Why we want to use the proper tools for our builds, and what this build will come to that. Yeah, as I mentioned at the very beginning, some reasons are obvious. We want to have cutting-edge technology because we want to develop ourselves, we want to be up to date with the world. Other than that, if we are using newer and a bit faster tools, some newer solutions, also the development process is more efficient. More efficient development process, less time spent for the development, more money, etc., etc. Firstly, why we need proper tools? Because, guys, tools are dedicated to something, and that is crucial for our use case that we had in my project. Something is dedicated to be used for certain goal, certain reason. When I was writing the agenda for the topic, I had that small thing to do in my flat, in my apartment. It was nice comparison because sometimes if you need to just hammer the nail into the wall, just a bit, not too much. Yeah, you can do that with pretty much everything that is a bit heavy and have a flat surface. You can hammer the nail, right? But okay, not everything is dedicated to use for this reason, to hammering nails. Obviously, sometimes you can use anything to get it done. And why? Why I was thinking about that? Because hammer was in the basement. Yeah, I was a bit too lazy to go and fetch it. And this is the problem sometimes in the DevOps area, that maybe we are a bit lazy, or maybe the legacy and the heritage of the older project is so huge that we do not want to start something from scratch for little new thing that comes to our project, to our company. So the footprint is too small to get something done from scratch. And sometimes you have the time pressure, and the manager is asking to get it done as soon as possible, and you're telling him that this is completely something different, you need to use different tools, or just organize that differently, right? So we know why tools are important and why we want to use proper tools. But what is the build to get the build done? For the DevOps guy, that's going to be probably the CI process. For the developer, the build will be, I don't know, compiled project, right? The service is up and running on his workstation. He's fine with that. The unit tests are passed. The build is working perfectly fine. If something is crashing in the pipeline, then let's call the DevOps guy. The pipeline is buggy, right? If you ask the project manager, maybe this is something that they want to share with customer. If this is the QA guy, then this is the deployable service on the staging environment, whatever you're using for the test. So the build depends, and that is also important to make sure what we are talking of when we talk build. Okay, and finally, what kind of tools we want to use for certain things. This is important, and right now I'm gonna make a bit of switch in the presentation and go in the middle part of the whole topic, because as I mentioned, sometimes we as a DevOps team want to implement the whole solution using one technology. That was our case. That was our case study. Not because we want to, it's because we got that from the previous owners of the project, right? So that was our legacy. That was the heritage that we got, and that was one thing. We knew that the technology used for everything is not a good solution. But again, we as a DevOps team were discussing about the DevOps stuff. But at the same time, we had the developers, and also we had the developers who were running these Macs, Windows machines, whatever. So it all depends. What does it mean? The technology that we were using in our project for building microservices, this is the net of the topic, building microservices, getting them built and sent for testing and releasing and deploying to stage environments. We're using Gradle, and Gradle was a perfect technology for certain things, especially if you are working on Java-based applications, for example, because the dependency management, you get that for free. You can just put the small information about what Maven repositories are you going to use, or Artifactory repositories. You can inject the credentials, everything you got from scratch, right? However, projects that were not based on Java, you can imagine in that use case, I'm going to talk about the UIs, but that was also applicable to Python. That was also applicable for, I think, some Go-based services. That was a bit too much, right? Why the Gradle was fetched at the very beginning? Well, because if you're using 10 years ago Groovy, right now Kotlin, you can do with that pretty much everything because that's scripting language. So when we were preparing data from our CI process for dashboards, right, that was pretty easy. When we were generating changelogs without using the plugins to Git, but we're implementing for certain reasons from scratch our own solutions. Kotlin or Groovy were perfect for that. When we wanted to orchestrate the deployments, imagine you are working in a really robust project, right? You have 200 developers. You're working with 5 different stage environments, and all of them want to have their changes tested. And not only you have at the same time the certain amount of rules that the commit needs to pass before it will be injected into or merged into the main branch, right? So using some kind of scripting language to orchestrate everything, that was a really crucial point to choose the technology. The problem was it was used for a bit too much amount of things. Look at that. Those are just small snippets. Maybe you can see something from this slide. We are talking about the UI applications. We had the tasks implemented in Gradle to call npm or all to npm prune the payloads in the Node.js applications. In fact, the integration with the Sonar Cube, that was nice because in one file in the repository you could set all of the properties, etc. But what are the pain points, the main pain points when you're working on Node.js application and you had to have all of your scripts wrapped around Gradle and Groovy or Kotlin? Node.js is Node.js. It doesn't have the Java inside, right? For Gradle, you need to have that. And not only for CI process, you need to have that also locally on your workstation. Otherwise, you will be forced not to just reuse certain commands that you want to execute to, for example, build your Node.js applications for development environment. Maybe you know in Node.js you can pick the whether this is development, build, or production, right? So sometimes the commands in the npm are that large, and you don't want to hit that by hand every single time, especially when you have them implemented in your own repository. But also, do you really want to install Java and fetch the Gradle? And sometimes the DevOps guys are updating the version of Gradle, so each time you need to pull 10 megabytes of updates to the Gradle just to hit npm prune payload, right? So that was a bit ridiculous. Also, from the CI perspective, when you are working on whatever this is, Travis, Jenkins, Tekton, and you have dynamic build workers, very often, for the sake of saving money, you have them optimized in a way what is installed there, just to make them as small as possible and to make them working as efficiently as possible. And now you have the worker that is dedicated for the UIs, the latest node is installed, everything is there, but you don't have Java and you don't have Gradle. Who would need that? We used to spend like 3 or 4 minutes just to fetch that, install that, make sure everything is up and running, and then we could bypass this step and proceed with the proper build and testing. That costs money. And also, what I mentioned behind the words, the code complexities is huge, right? Because as a UI developer right now, instead of checking your package JSON or whatever else, you need to go to some Gradle properties files, you need to check some build Gradle stuff. Sometimes these Gradle builds, in our case, that was templated and it was not implemented in every single repository. We had the single project which was fetched as the dependency to the stub templated Gradle projects, right? So even that was a bit hard for developers because they didn't have exactly all of the steps, all of the code in their hand, in their repository. This was just some dependency to package that contains all of the Gradle stuff that you need to execute or use to get your build done. So we decided to fix that. And it was always, this is always a question, how to fix something that we all know doesn't work perfectly, but at the other hand, there are reasons why this is implemented this way. It's not like someone stupid come to the house and say, oh, let's use Gradle for that, that's gonna be a great idea, and everyone was clapping and saying, yeah, that's a good idea. Sometimes there are reasons to do that. Firstly, what we made in our case study was to distinguish the steps that you need to do in the CI process, the steps that you need to do or want to do on the local machine, and trying to make these scripts, all of these tools, these technologies, let's say technology, language, place agnostic, right? So whatever you are, whatever you need to do, there should be something that is, let's say, native that you can pick and make sure this is quite efficiently implemented and simple in usage. And it would be great if you are using the Node.js application and all of your dependencies and scripts are in the package JSON. It would be great to put that in the package JSON, right? So this is exactly what we tried to do. Not yet. Okay, and I'm pretty much done with slides. I'm gonna show you a bit of the, let's call them dummy projects that I made for this. Okay, but with that setting of display, I cannot see anything. I hope that's gonna work. Nope. Okay, that seems good. Okay. So guys, in Node.js applications, there is, how many of you implemented something using Node.js? Okay. So there is some knowledge in the DevOps area about the Node.js, but it's not really important. when you're creating the Node.js application, you can write your module and everything is nice. But when you need to add the time picker, for example, you're not gonna implement that from scratch, you're gonna inject the dependencies. So in every one Node.js application, you have the package JSON, and inside this package JSON, you have the dependencies field. Here you're listing all of the dependencies and versions that you want to use. For example, the time picker. But imagine that you want to make sure your Node.js applications is implemented also in the secure and safely manner. So you need some tools like ESLints, Jests, some test frameworks, something to check if there are any vulnerabilities in your code, etc., etc. You're not going to inject that in the dependencies because at the end of the day, when you build a Node.js application and you will check the Node modules catalog that will be created after fetching all of these dependencies and installing them, yeah, it's huge. Like when you're working on JavaScript, you know that hello world is a one-liner, but it pulls half of the internet on your laptop, right? So this is why in the Node.js there is also the section called dev dependencies. In dev dependencies, you can, on the other hand, put all of the dependencies that you need only for the build process and test processes that will not be pushed with the final application. For example, in your container image. In our case, we're building container images. Obviously, that is not a requirement. So when we know that there is the possibility to have the package that can be shared with all of the Node.js applications, right? And we know that we can have them not as the production dependency, but the dev dependency. Let's do that. Let's use that. So what we did, created a small library called Common UI Tools, and this is actually the library that contains the small amount of scripts that you are able to execute for whatever reasons you need. I haven't mentioned that, but when you're working on such huge project, you have all of these security constraints, then you can imagine that you need to run, for example, ESLints, VA scans, CV linters. What else are we doing? We have some GitHub pre-commit hooks that are being executed. Other than that, for the reason of refreshing our container images, we take our application that is compiled and we are just switching the base OS. So we had few talks during this conference about building container images, for example, about the NICs. So when you're building container images, you are picking the base OS. It might be Scratch, it might be something else. And on top of that, you are adding additional layers. For example, you are adding your application. Now imagine that this container image is working on the production environment for 3 weeks. What is happening with that after 3 weeks? The base OS already has some vulnerabilities, right? You want to fix them. And sometimes you do not want to recompile everything. You do not want to build everything from scratch. What you want to do is you want to just refresh the base OS, so the first layer of your container image. For that particular reason, what we are doing is we are creating the tarball with our application that we compiled, and we're storing that somewhere in Artifactory or whatever Maven repository you can imagine. And when there is the need, what we do is following the steps from the container file. You are just taking the fresh base OS, probably latest, and add on top your application. But you're not compiling that. You are just copying it from the tarball that you saved before. So those are the simple or I would say day-to-day tasks that you need to execute. I haven't mentioned obviously that when you're creating container file, container image, you need to have container file, you need to log into registry, you need to build the container image, and you need to publish that container image to certain registry or maybe to few registries. That depends on the security policies, right? So all of that are tools or tasks that you need to somehow wrap around. What you can do using Node.js, I really hope you can see something. Okay, so Node.js in package.json allows you to specify the bin field. The bin field allows you to create a map create a dictionary of, let's say, command names that you want to execute, and the file that contains the logic that needs to be executed, right? So, for example, if we want to execute the prune payload, we can check the implementation of the prune payloads. Yeah, so here we have the logic, right? So there is a certain amount of stuff that we need to follow. Imagine guys from development team that they are forced to do that every time they want to create so-called development build or development package. That would be really a nightmare. But going back to the main topic, when you have the ability to create the command that is linked with your implementation, that's half of the success, right? Because in Node.js, when you are going to build that project, the common UI tools, and publish that as a Node package, then in other projects, I also created the project called DevOps Days. If you will have a look at the package.json, you remember what I talked about the dev dependencies? So here we have the list of the dev dependencies. So we are using a lot of different stuff. Also the common UI tools is here. So from the project perspective, this is completely enough to specify the common UI tools as your dev dependencies. And after that, when you are going to install your application or install all of the Node modules that you have listed in the dependencies or dev dependencies list, what will happen? So going back to the package.json of our package, right? So right now, after installing that package, common UI tools, depends on the fact if you are going to install that globally or locally, the certain thing will happen. So either the that file, for example, Artifactory push JavaScript file, will be linked to Artifactory bin, and that bin will be linked to the directory of all of your bins. In terms of Windows, that's gonna be the CMD that will execute the Artifactory push JavaScript, right? Another option is, if you are not installing that globally, is just to exec these functions. So if we will go back to our project where we do want to use our common UI tools, that will be right now completely enough when we have those. One second. Okay. It's a bit better now. Okay. So when we have the common UI tools specified as dev dependencies, we're going to run npm install, and npm install will fetch all of these Node modules, save them in the directory of our project. And as I mentioned, if the packages have the bin fields inside, like we have in common UI tools, right now we are able to execute these packages. So for instance, we can check that we do not have Docker file in the current directory, but if we are going to run npm run build container file, the container file will be created. But how do we know to run the build container file command actually? That is another thing in the Node.js. So let's switch quickly to our DevOps Days projects. And in DevOps Days projects, not only we have specified our dev dependency with common UI tools, but here also we have the scripts section. You remember when I talked to you that sometimes the npm scripts can be really long? This is what I meant, right? You need to specify certain amount of variables, etc., etc. But also we can leverage that fact that we have the scripts here, and we can implement our own. So for example, the build container file, which are just executed, it is doing nothing else, but it is executing the bean create container file. And the bean create container file has been specified in here, in our common UI tools, under the bean section. Right? Someone can say, okay, but in Gradle that was really nice because we had the Gradle properties and everything that we need to template it, we can just put it right away there as well. And this is only one hacky thing that we had to do, because if you want to make sure that your developers can specify whatever they want to use in their scripts, in their tasks, in their repository, the best place for that, here we are in the DevOps Days project, the best place for that is the package.json file as well. But here, what we did is we added into the JSON our field, the common UI tools. So here, this is treated as just like a bit of a JSON file, right? So we specified all of the properties that we had to specify, and our library, the common UI tools, on the other hand, is performing one hacky thing. It reads your package JSON and it maps that directory. Let me quickly open that. In utils. Okay, so mode nodule is a very specific object in Node.js because this is object that is included into each and every one JavaScript file in your Node.js application. And leveraging that, we can just read the package.json file and map all of the properties that we had in our common UI tools section, and then just read it as we do for any other JSON files, and we can just pick whatever property we want to use. We are a bit out of time, so I do not want to spend too much time and go internally into the Node.js specifics, especially that two folks only raised their hand. What I wanted to highlight here, that because of the fact that we had this one Gradle technology, one tool that was used for pretty much everything, we ended up in a situation when we as a DevOps team were quite comfortable because everything was implemented in, let's say, one language, in one technology that was really easy to maintain. But sometimes that was really painful for our developers. Also, that was painful for the CI/CD processes, right? And we decided to make that small investment. At the end of the day, that wasn't that much amount of work to get it done. And sure, there are minuses of that, because right now, if we need to make changes in the templates for creating container files, if we need to make changes into whatever that we are shipping, We need to do that in few places, in one technology that is for UI, in one technology that is for Java, and in other frameworks that we are using for Python. But we are after a few months of using that, and definitely that pays off. If you implement something in one language, it's not a huge deal to do that in another language, especially if you are working on such in-house solutions, right? I think that's pretty much it. So this is the highlight that I wanted to make by these presentations, that developers and development teams are really our customers, and it should be our job to make them not only happy, but to allow them to work in a really efficient way, and to choose the tools that are proper, that are dedicated to certain tasks that you are running. And maybe one thing at the very end. You know what was the really nice thing about having that job done? Because it turned out that we do not have to rewrite or re-implement everything. We just picked those parts that were related with the development environments, and the whole rest that is related with orchestrating deployments, that is related with full software testing life cycle, where we are deploying from one environment and to another. We're using some GitOps processes. We need to update some repositories with new version of service, right? All of that we are doing with the tech that we did, because it proved it works fine. And in that case, the Gradle stuff works really nice. But that real small portion that we thought, okay, maybe it's not a big deal, we can reuse the same technology, even it completely doesn't fit CUIs. Yeah, it was worth to re-implement that. That's pretty much it from my side. If you will have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me via email or LinkedIn. I added the QR at the very beginning. Yeah, thank you so much. And obviously, if you have any questions,